Canadian politicians were working to bring an Afghan MP to this country before she was killed this past weekend. Mursal Nabizada and her bodyguard were shot and killed by gunmen. She was one of the few female MPs who stayed in Kabul after the Taliban seized power. A bipartisan group of 6 Canadian MPs have been collaborating behind the scenes since last October to fast-track other Afghan MPs to Canada. So where does this effort stand? Sean Fraser is Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us. I'd like to start with, as you are aware, Canadian MPs had been working to bring Mursal Nabizada to Canada before she was killed. I want to know what went wrong here.
The reality is the heartbreaking situation that we've seen in this particular case is all too common. We're dealing with a territory that has been seized by the Taliban, a listed terrorist entity in Canadian law. There are thousands of people who are deep into the process of being approved to come to Canada, and despite the fact that from an administrative point of view, they're largely through the process, securing safe passage throughout and outside of Afghanistan remains the primary obstacle. We've been engaged with MPs on a number of cases, including Afghan MPs who we continue to work to see if we can help provide refuge to in Canada. But these ones stick with you. When you learn of a person who's been killed, who's been innocent, who's been targeted by virtue of their desire to help build a democracy where girls can go to school in their home country, this is the very worst that humanity has to offer, and it's on full display in Afghanistan. And this is why we've made one of the most substantial contributions of any country in the world to commit to resettle at least 40,000 Afghan refugees.
And we'll talk about that in just a moment, but
Certainly.
I want to get to, yesterday we spoke with 3 MPs who were part of the effort to try and bring this MP to Canada, and the Conservative Alex Rust said your office could have done more. Listen to what he's had to say here.
The minister, using his ministerial capabilities or powers to issue the appropriate documentation and exemption and allow these Afghan women and their families to come to Canada.
So he had made the argument that more could have been done by your office. Is that true? Is that the case? Could your office done more here?
So I've spoken with Alex about the Afghan MPs who are seeking to come to Canada. I have deep respect for him and for his service, and I believe he has the best of intentions and only wants to help, much like MPs of different parties who've reached out. But there's a fundamental issue that people need to understand about how the process of bringing refugees to Canada works. It's not me sitting in my office pointing and choosing amongst the more than 1 million people who've expressed interest in coming to Canada. We have referral partners who assess people's vulnerability that come into the program, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's certain nonprofit players, or private sponsorship groups here in Canada. We're trying to develop ways where we can work with a broader range of partners to tap into their ability to assess people's vulnerability and still insist they go through a rigorous process, including security checkpoints. Having me bypass the process by selecting particular individuals is not how the process works in this initiative or other refugee resettlement initiatives. We always want to do more to help more people, and we're going to continue to work with parliamentarians of all parties to make that happen.
There are 8 other women Afghan MPs that are still in Afghanistan. My colleague Catherine Cullen, the host of CBC Radio's The House, interviewed one of those MPs today, and I'd like you to have a listen to what she had to say.
Even at night, I cannot sleep very well because I'm thinking that someone will come and someone will kill me as well. All the world knows that what is going on in Afghanistan, particularly with the women of Afghanistan who are in the tough situation of their life. They are erased from everything, including their basic rights. I kindly request the Canadian government and people to stand beside the women of Afghanistan in this important time.
What do you have to say to her?
I have to say that this exemplifies exactly why we've stepped up to offer such a significant refugee resettlement initiative for vulnerable people, specifically women who are facing persecution, torture, or death at the hands of the Taliban. Sadly, Katie, every day I hear stories of people who are being tortured, innocent people who are being killed, that reach out seeking Canada's protection. With more than 1 million requests for help and a commitment to resettle at least 40,000, one of the difficult things that I struggle with every day is knowing that there's hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people who will not escape life under the Taliban rule. But to see that there are people adjusting, being given a second lease on life in Canada, seeing young girls who are going to be able to go to school in our communities, this is the kind of thing that reassures me that our effort is worthwhile, but that we always need to do more and not focus on what's been done, but what we can continue to do to help more vulnerable people who are fleeing violence.
Is there work underway to help bring those 8 female MPs to Canada?
We're working to make sure that we expand the process that will help additional groups refer people into our refugee program.
But after the murder of this MP, is there efforts to get these women out?
Well,
is it something you can talk about?
There are certain things on individual cases that I hesitate to talk about, in particular because sometimes the details that we share about individual cases can put the people who we're seeking to protect at risk. We are working on a number of different groups that parliamentarians and other organizations have raised with us, but we have to be extremely sensitive about what we share, when we share it, because saying the wrong thing can sometimes fall into the hands of the wrong people who use the information they glean to cause harm to people that we might be seeking to offer protection to.
Your government has pledged to get at least 40,000 Afghans to Canada, bringing many of those individuals in from Pakistan. Your department and Global Affairs are now looking into reports of arrests of migrants in Pakistan who don't have the proper paperwork. Is this something you're factoring into your work when it comes to how quickly your team needs to get people to Canada?
Absolutely, and we've been engaging with the government in Pakistan and actually other countries in the region as well on a number of issues, including trying to secure safe passage for people so they can leave Afghanistan and not be turned away at the border of a neighboring country. We're now working with the government of Pakistan to seek assurances that people who are currently in Pakistan who might be facing the expiry of a visa, for example, to receive assurances that they won't be deported, for example, back to Pakistan. We dealt with
Are you getting any of those assurances? Are you getting any assurances so far?
Yes, we're working very closely on solutions, because I want to be careful, because not every individual is an identical situation and different situations demand different solutions. We dealt with a similar situation in Tajikistan a number of months ago and brought a stop to the deportations that would allow more people to come to Canada. We've seen charters routinely landing from Islamabad into our country with now almost 30,000 people who've been resettled. We're going to continue to work on a daily basis with partners in the region, including Pakistan, to make sure that the people who are destined for Canada, who have been approved to come here, do in fact receive Canada's protection and are not caught up in some difficulty associated with the validity of travel documents that allow people to stay in Pakistan. But right now, I'm every bit as concerned and more concerned about the people who remain inside Afghanistan. We're going to continue to work with people on the ground to do what we can to help secure safe passage for those who are already approved to come to Canada but can't navigate their way throughout and outside of the Taliban-controlled territory.